In the second half of the program, we shift our attention to South Sudan and the ongoing efforts at rebuilding peace at the grassroots. As we all know, the country has faced immense challenges due to conflict, displacement, and humanitarian crisis. However, amidst these challenges, there are inspiring stories of resilience, community spirit, and peace-building efforts. One of such, the United Nations mission in South Sudan, has been instrumental in driving grassroots efforts to build peace in conflict-torn areas, including Warab State. Their work with local communities, traditional leaders, and civil society organizations is said to have helped to promote dialogue, reconciliation, and social cohesion. In this conversation, we'll explore the importance of grassroots peace building in South Sudan and how local initiatives can contribute to sustainable peace and stability. We'll discuss the challenges and opportunities that come with community-led peace-building efforts and examine the role of organizations such as UNMISS in supporting these efforts. We have two guests for this conversation, but for now, we have the country coordinator, I believe. Okay, no, we don't have the country coordinator, Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa, but we do have political analyst, Dr. Majduline El-Tahir. She joins us from Oslo, Norway. Thank you for being here, Doctor. Could you just give us a picture of what the realities are in South Sudan today?
Thank you for inviting me. The situation in South Sudan is quite a difficult one. Lots of people are suffering from faults of civil war and fighting, both in their country and in neighboring countries, specifically in Sudan. A large number of the population is facing famine and hunger, displacement, and the political situation is very fragile since the parties have started moving away systematically from the agreement, the peace agreement of 2018, despite all the signing parties repeatedly claiming that they are abiding by the agreement and that they adhere to the agreement terms, but in reality and on the ground, the people of South Sudan see daily the parties moving away from that agreement, which puts the country on the road to yet another breakup of the political system and a civil war, going back to the civil war, something that no one wants, especially now when the situation is so dire.
Okay, I just want to talk about what World Food Program is also doing. The Deputy Executive Director said something that I think we would love your thought on. He said the scale of suffering does not make headlines, but that millions of women, fathers and children are spending each day fighting hunger to survive. This news was on July 22nd. That's when I saw it. Has anything really, truly changed with the hunger situation there?
I think this picture painted here is quite a true picture, if not even more modest than what the reality is. The people are suffering, and the people are suffering in their masses, and they are suffering daily. So the picture is very much true, what you are pointing out here. What is also sadly equally true is the fact that South Sudan is perhaps more or less totally out of the radar. And when people talk about internationally or in the international media or even regional media or African media about wars and atrocities and so on, South Sudan is barely ever mentioned among them. And that is, of course, is something that the people of South Sudan are working very hard in the grassroots to try to change that idea, that it's okay to have war in South Sudan, that South Sudan has never ever been associated with anything else but a back-to-back war since 1950s. Therefore, what you're saying is quite true. What you are saying is the fact that South Sudan is totally out of the radar of the international conscience.
Yeah, the WFP also said they have the tool and capacity to deliver, but without funding and without peace, their hands are tied. And that brings us to the United Nations mission in South Sudan. They are working towards peace, among other issues that they're taking on. What's your assessment of their efforts so far?
The efforts so far has not been up to the crisis. The efforts on peace are not up to the crisis and the situation, and humanitarian efforts are also not up to what is needed. And the two go together, the political solution and the humanitarian, and dealing with the humanitarian aspect of it, they go together, and both of them are going very slowly, and sometimes they're going in the wrong direction.
What are the root causes of conflict in South Sudan? Just give us an idea. I know there are multiple issues, and how can grassroots peace building address them?
South Sudan is a country which has been under civil war, like I said, for quite a number of decades, with some poses for peace here and there. The reason is, most and foremost, is the underdevelopment, the systematic underdevelopment over the decades of South Sudan, which meant that the communities, because of the war, have been moved and displaced repeatedly several times from one place to another, including to neighboring countries, including to countries in Europe, America, and the rest of the world, Australia, and so on. That in itself, in any community, when any community faces that kind of mass displacement, is in itself a way of weakening the core structure of the country. And then when the core structure of the country is weakened, it's very much easier for both national political leaders to misbehave, as well as makes any country very fragile to the intervention of foul international players as well. So, and for that comes in all the talk about ethnicities, tribes, and so on. South Sudan is not particularly more, there is something more characteristics about its tribes that makes it so prone to conflicts. The conflict is a conflict of interest. The conflict is a conflict of power, and the conflict is basically has its backbone reason being the underdevelopment of the country over the decades. It's not just, I'm not saying that there are no ethnic clashes and there are not ethnic issues. Ethnic issues are as much as in South Sudan as in any other country. But it is the way of dealing with it, whereas some communities have schools and system and roads and employment and educated children, educated adults, and stability for families and couples and so on. That creates a situation whereby ethnicity is different ethnicities is something that is celebrated, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, let's talk about, I mean, the situation is already dire. There's a lot of concern about survival. But then we hear that the risk, as of since April 2023, there are reports that over 1.2 million people have come into South Sudan from Sudan. What is the impact of this displacement and migration on peace-building efforts in South Sudan?
The breakup the war in Sudan in 2023 did not come as a surprise to me personally, and its consequences on South Sudan also did not come as a surprise to me. If you look at South Sudan, it's a country surrounded by other countries which are all suffering from kind of the same symptoms, and that is weak states, very weakened states, lack of development, and civil war. South Sudan and Sudan are very much, the future of these two countries is very much aligned together. There is an illusion, or there was an illusion in 2011 that among what you call it, among Southern Sudanese and Northern Sudanese, that perhaps with the separation of South Sudan, each country is going to flourish without really dealing with the root causes of the problem. What happened was that the two countries continued suffering. The war in North Sudan spilled over in South Sudan, and a large number, like you said, 1.2 refugees are settled in the Sudan in a situation which is already very dire. So it's more like adding insult to injury, and a situation which is already extremely difficult. It becomes even more difficult. People who already have very little for themselves, they have to share it with a large number of people coming from North Sudan. And a lot of those also who came fleeing the war in North Sudan were actually Southern Sudanese as well. Like I said, the fate of the two nations is inseparable. But also, in addition to that, the geopolitics between the two countries is very irresponsible, whereby the government of the North supports some factions in the South in order to gain some leverage here and there, and vice versa. The government of the South plays games with some of the fighting parties, sometimes with this and sometimes with that, in order to gain power and leverage. And in between, there are the interests of both countries were affected, and and like I said, for example, the oil exports, which has stopped.
It basically compounds the current realities on the ground. But from your vantage point, what would be some of the most effective strategies for grassroots peace building in South Sudan?
I would say organization and organization and organization. It is very difficult to ask people to organize when they are in the difficult situation that they are in, when they are fighting truly for their life and for as much as a piece of bread and a jerrycan of water. But at the same time, there isn't anything that can, in my view and opinion, that can help, except that the people join forces, they organize, they make a body together that can and is capable of enforcing, of holding their leaders responsible, holding the leaders to stick to the peace agreement and not to let the war spill over and the political games and corruption and personal interests to take over. The only solution for the people is to stick together, to organize together for the government, to join forces and make a voice and make a body and that would force their leaders to listen to them.
How can peace-building efforts be further integrated with humanitarian and development initiatives like what we see the UNMISS doing?
Excuse me?
I'm asking how peace-building efforts can be further integrated with humanitarian and development initiatives.
The United Nations is doing what they can. But the United Nations, we have to understand, the United Nations is a body that is weakened every day, systematically, that be as a political tool or as a humanitarian tool, is we can systematically, by the big players and by the superpowers, namely the United States, for example, which makes it in itself a very weak organization. However, having said that, and as critical to the role of the UN one can be, I think it is very important, especially now more ever than before, that we, the people of South Sudan, especially grassroots, work in collaboration with the United Nations in order to tackle both the humanitarian situation and to put this pressure on the leaders to stick to the peace agreement. I think it is very important to include the UN, for the grassroots movement, to include the UN in their efforts, despite knowing very well the limits of the United Nations, especially at this period of time and time in history.
Is there any way that local communities can be empowered to take ownership of building peace initiatives?
The local communities actually do that. They actually do that, and they do that under severe circumstances. They do that on a daily basis, a trip every day to the health clinic, or to get the food, or something like that, is a trip that is filled with danger, that is requires a lot of negotiations, it requires a lot of dealing with each other and so on. The communities, especially fragile communities, a large number of peoples in clusters, in tents, or sometimes even not even that, just out in the open air. People do take ownership, and they do take responsibility, and they're very responsible for each other. And if you visit them in the ground, you will see unbelievable sense of togetherness, sense of solidarity, because at that level, at the local level, people really do understand very well, and from some really tragic experiences, that no one really cares about them except themselves, and they have to take care of each other, and they have to deal with each other. So the local communities are empowered, despite being on the run, but they still are empowered.
That's so true. But whatever their efforts are, if there is any element of sabotage, it might make null everything that they do. So what is the impact of external factors such as international politics, economic interest, and the likes on peace-building efforts?
I believe that the local communities, with all the qualities, resilience, strengths, organization that they have, when coupled with organizations like the United Nations, when also, most importantly, a very important element is Southern Sudanese in diaspora, and these three kind of entities together shall be able. It will take time, but this is the solution for South Sudan. That the local communities, the Sudanese in diaspora, the Southern Sudanese in diaspora, together with NGOs and United Nations, they put enough pressure on the political leaders to do the right thing.
I guess we'll have to leave it there for now. Doc, thank you so much for holding forth for two. We're supposed to have Jackie Bage, Country Coordinator, Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa. But for some reason, we could not connect. However, Dr. El-Tahir held the fort quite firmly. Thank you so much for obliging us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Always our pleasure. Thank you for allowing us to have you.